My name is Yash Milan
Hmm.
Keshani, and today I'm going to make a presentation on the road safety assignment on behalf of my group.
Hmm.
I've used the speeding data set for analysis and will talk through the different variables that are being included in the data set. The data
Hmm.
set general information includes the number of fatal accidents that have occurred over the
बिल्कुल
years using different vehicles, the number of speeding cases
Hmm.
of vehicles every year, the number of speeding cases happening streetwise in Toronto, the number of speeding cases based on light conditions,
तो पूछे किसने
and the number of speeding cases and injuries based on the visibility. I have therefore generated charts for each of the general
Hmm.
information listed above and will be providing in-depth analysis of those charts
Hmm.
in order to have a better understanding and insight of the speeding dataset. Now
अच्छा
looking at the
अच्छा
first chart, which illustrates the number
Hmm.
of fatal accidents that have happened from the year 2008 to
क्या
the
यूज
year
करना है
2019 using different vehicles as a mode of transportation. The chart
हाँ
tells us that the highest number of
लगा
fatal accidents had occurred in the year 2016, whereby
अच्छा
around 985 cases were registered in that year, which can be seen as the biggest bar
क्या
with
है
three different
आगे को भी
colors:
रख लो करना
green, blue, and pink. The chart also tells us that in the year 2019, only 83 cases were accounted for the fatal
मजा आ रहा है एक
accidents,
बार भी मैसेज
which
देखा
was
करो
the lowest of all. Based on the analysis, I
हम्म
identified that automobile station wagon
हाँ
vehicles, which are where the bar
हाँ
is dark blue, were the biggest contributor towards
अच्छा
fatal accidents happening every year, and it accounted to around
हम्म
1,394 cases, in which the highest number of cases
हाँ
were 421 in the year
इतना
2016.
गैर क्यों हो सकता
Now, looking at the motorcycle, if you see the bar there, it is light green in color,
हम्म
was the second most contributor of the fatal accidents happening every year, in which 725 cases were registered. There were consistently a small number of fatal accidents
हाँ
which had happened from the year 2009 to the year
हम्म
2012, in which there were below
अच्छा
200
अच्छा
cases. To my understanding, the reason behind such drop was that public had undertaken better
हाँ
precautionary methods, and at the same time the traffic police of
अच्छा अच्छा
Toronto had also implemented strict measures such as installing CCTV cameras, imposing fines and tickets to avoid speeding.
हम्म
There were also a high number of constant
करो बढ़िया
fatal
कर दो
accidents from the year 2015 to the year 2018,
मुझे है
in
रहने
which
दे
the highest of all was in
रिकॉर्ड
2016.
करता रहे
The reason could be due to the poor reckless driving, less
हाँ
visibility, poor weather conditions, or increase in the number of vehicles driven on the road.
बिल्कुल यार
Now, looking at the second chart,
हाँ
which illustrates the number of speeding vehicles yearly from the year 2006 to the year
मैं तो
2019.
बारहवीं में हैरान हूँ
The
बोलती तुम
chart
बारहवीं में
tells
हो
us that
जाओ
the highest number of speeding vehicles was in the
देख
year
रहे हो मैं तो करके
2006,
बैठा हूँ
accounting to around 225 cases. The chart also tells us that in the year 2014,
कर
only
रहा मैं
103 cases were registered for vehicle speeding, which was the lowest of all. Based on the analysis, I identified that the automobile station wagon vehicle, which is dark blue, the bars, were the major contributor towards speeding cases happening every year, in which around 943 vehicles were caught for speeding. The motorcycles, which are light green in color in the bars, had also contributed to speeding every year, and around
Video recorder
116
anytime
cases
you
were
want to.
registered, which were in total. That's what I mean from
Screen
2006 to
recording.
2019. Based on the
Hmm.
analysis, I also
चलो
identify
ठीक है
that
ठीक है बाय.
trucks, which were of several forms
Okay.
like closed trucks, open trucks, pickups, and other trucks, and also the passenger vans and municipal transit bus, were the least contributors towards the speeding cases, and from which bicycle was the lowest of all. The first 3 years, from the year 2006 to the year 2008, had many speeding cases, where the first 2 years were witnessed with more than 200 cases, and from 2009 to 2015, the number of speeding cases were well under control and were around and below 150. This shows that strict measures were implemented by the Toronto Traffic Police, such as catching and fining those who are speeding. Now, looking at the third chart, which illustrates the number of speeding cases that occurred on the streets of Toronto, which had happened from the year 2006 to the year 2018, using different vehicles as a mode of transportation. The chart tells us that the highest number of cases that happened on the street were in 2018, accounting to around 27 cases. The chart also tells us that in the year 2013, only two cases were registered for vehicle speeding, which was the lowest of all, and those two cases took place in Calais Street. Based on the analysis, I identify that Highway 27N had the greatest number of speeding cases in a given year. Around 12 cases were registered in 2010, which could be seen as the maroon color bar in 2010. Kingston Road Street was the biggest contributor towards speeding cases, accounting to around 32 cases from 2006 to 2018, which can be seen as a light blue bar. Now, based on my analysis, other streets like Judson Street, Banbury Road, F.G. Gardner, Express E streets were the least contributor towards speeding cases from 2006 to 2018. Now, looking at the fourth chart, which illustrates the number of cases according to the lighting conditions which happened over the years. The chart tells us that a large number of cases were witnessed during the daylight. Around 500 cases occurred during those hours, and the lowest number of cases was seen during the dusk artificial light, and only one case had happened during that time. Based on the analysis, automobile station wagon contributed the most towards speeding cases. Around 943 cases were accounted, and which could be seen as the dark blue bars. The color of the bar is the dark blue, where most cases were seen during the daylight, and the main reason to this is the traffic and congestion during those rush hours where everyone is in a desperate need of reaching to their destination. Many cases were also registered during dark, and around 330 cases had occurred during the dark time. And the main reason behind it was due to the lack of traffic and empty streets, which makes drivers more comfortable to overspeed. Now, looking at the fifth chart, we can analyze that there were around 1,800 cases registered during clear visibility, which can be seen here in the first bar. It is usually the time when drivers are fully aware of the number of cars ahead and behind them, and there is always less chance of meeting an accident, which therefore encourages drivers to increase more speed. Based on my analysis, strong wind and misty conditions had the least number of speeding cases. This is usually the time when drivers have less control of the situation and less visibility during those conditions, which increases the chance of serious fatal accidents, which therefore discourages drivers to speed. In terms of injury, major injury was the biggest setback of speeding, which accounted to around 627 serious injury cases, which could have been life threatening. The figure was obtained by accumulating the red color separated bars in each visibility condition. So this is actually the information, or I would say the summary which I have provided for the charts which were there in the previous slide. This is more like the information and the trends which I have identified, the insights which I've identified. So let me just go through each because I have explained it up there. So if you see the first one, the number of fatal accidents was highest in 2016 and the lowest one was in 2019. And it was the automobile station wagon that contributed to fatal accidents every year. So this one was pretty consistent, and this transportation mode was highly risky and was causing more accidents. When you see the second most contributor, it was motorcycle, and that had accounted to around 725 cases throughout the years. And there were even very less numbers. Consistently, there were less numbers of fatal accidents that had occurred from 2009 to 2012, and they were all below 200. It is quite obvious that precautionary methods were taken by the public. Many drivers were quite cautious, and even the traffic police might have implemented strict measures. And now coming back to 2015, 2015 onwards, there were increase in number of fatal accidents that have occurred, and 2016 had the highest. Now the reason behind could obviously be the same common reasons like poor reckless driving. The visibility might have been poor due to the light. Even the weather conditions can affect. During the summers, it's quite clear, but if you drive during winters, it's not that easy. You don't get a clear view, or even during misty conditions. So, yeah, so these are simply the reasons. And this is the summary of the chart one. Thank you. Now, looking at the analysis of the second chart, the highest number of vehicles speeding was in the year 2006, and which had accounted to around 225 cases, while the lowest number of vehicles speeding was in the year 2014, which had accounted to around 103 cases. The automobile station wagon was the highest contributor to speeding every year, where it had around 943 vehicles. Now, as you see that this car had contributed more towards speeding, more the speeding, more the accidents, and more the fatal injuries. So yeah, this car definitely had the problems, and maybe it was a speed issue where people actually were enjoying driving the car and they were just accelerating and they were, or maybe probably there can be a technical issue where the car went out of control, so that could possibly be a reason. Motorcycle had also contributed towards speeding every year, and around 116 were accounted for the last 10 to 12 years. Now, looking at trucks, passenger vans, municipal transit bus, all were the least contributors towards speeding cases, and bicycle being the lowest of all. We all know trucks are pretty heavy. Trucks can be dangerous. No matter, I'm not saying that trucks are, just because they are slow, they're not dangerous. But actually, they if they occur any accident, there then definitely there is some serious injuries. However, if you see trucks and those other transport buses, they're quite slow in speed, so they're not going to contribute that much towards speed. Now, looking at the first 3 years, from 2006 to 2008, it had many speeding cases, where the first 2 years were witnessed with more than 200 cases. And from 2009 to 2015, the number of speeding cases were well under control and below 150. Now you could see there was improvement after 2008. And this is because the reason behind could have been more installation of CCTV cameras. What happens is
हम्म,
that if CCTV cameras are
तो
being
मेरा
placed everywhere, it is easy to track down people who had, overspeeded, and a ticket could be issued to them. So probably that could be one of the reasons why people started uh, feeling that people started thinking that let's just drive at a
जो मैं
normal
क्लास
speed
में
because
कॉलेज के
we are
प्रोजेक्ट
being
पैसे
we
में
are being
प्रोफेसर
watched.
करते
Though we are
हैं
not being watched by a cop, but definitely they are monitoring us through a CCTV camera.
जेबी बद्दू जी मेल मैंने पूरी
Now,
बदतमीजी
looking
देखा
at
था
the third chart, the analysis which I've made out of it is that the highest number of speeding cases based on the streets in Toronto was in 2018, which had accounted to around 27 cases. The lowest number of speeding cases according to the streets in Toronto was in 2013, and it had accounted to around 2 cases, and those 2 cases took place
फिर
in Calais Street. Highway 27N had the most number of speeding cases in a given year. Around 12 cases were registered in 2010. Kingston Road Street was the biggest contributor towards speeding cases, and it had accounted to around 32 cases from 2006 to 2018. So this is the street which you know a lot of speeding has taken place, and definitely some speed breakers or probably CCTV cameras should be installed there, or even traffic police should be there to control the traffic and probably those drivers who are really accelerating their cars. Other streets like Judson, Banbury, Gardner, and Express E streets were the least contributors towards speeding. The cases from 2006 to 2008. Now, looking at the fourth chart, the analysis which I've made is that large number of cases were witnessed during the daylight. Around 500 cases occurred during those hours, while the lowest number of cases were seen during the dusk artificial light, where only one cases had occurred. Automobile station wagon car contributed the most towards speeding cases. It had around 943 cases throughout the years. Most cases were seen during the daylight, and the main reason to this is the traffic and the congestion during those rush hours where everyone is in a desperate need of reaching to their destinations. While many cases were also registered during dark, around 330 cases had occurred, and the main reason behind it is all obviously due to the lack of traffic and empty streets, which makes drivers more comfortable and encourage them to speed. Now let's analyze the fifth chart. There were around 1,800 cases registered during clear visibility. It is the time when drivers are fully aware of the number of cars ahead and behind them, and there is always less chance of meeting an accident, which therefore encourages drivers to speed. Strong wind and misty conditions had the least number of speeding cases. Drivers have less control and visibility during those conditions, which increases the chance of serious fatal accidents, which therefore discourages drivers to speed. Now, in terms of injuries, major injury was the biggest problem, the biggest setback of speeding, which accounted to around 627 serious injury cases, which could have been really life threatening. Now, to conclude, I would say that road safety is something that is not only important for the drivers but also for the passengers and the public. Based on the data set, we can clearly see the main causes of accidents happening on the streets of Toronto, which are mainly due to overspeeding, especially during daylight, where the visibility is clear, and thus this has contributed to several major and fatal injuries which could have taken away lives of many people. There are many ways of promoting road safety, and this can be done by imposing speed limits on highways and roads, building speed breakers, imposing fine on overspeeding, and educating drivers about different road signs. Now, the report which we have made has conducted a deep analysis of the type of vehicles that have contributed to speeding, the nature of the injury, the visibility factor, the lighting conditions of the day. The main scope and purpose of this report is to identify the cause of speeding and the ways by which preventive measures could be implemented in the future to avoid such speeding cases in Toronto. Thank you so much, and I hope you liked my presentation. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.